Hello! You get glitter stitches, and I get glitter stitches, and our projects get glitter stitches. I'm the Knitting Fairy Godmother, and today we have book club. We're talking about Mindful Thoughts for Makers, Connecting Head, Hearts, and Hands by Ellie Beck. It's a little book, and I'm having so much fun talking about this with you. Today, we're on page 53. And the topic is being conscious of the environment. So a couple of things come up for me as I am reading through Ellie's words. And I want to start with choosing your materials wisely. And this is a direct quote. So Ellie says, many potters and ceramicists are opting to dig their own clay or find supplies that access local clays in order to minimize the disruption to other environments and think about their own nearby earth, clay, in a new way. So some things that come up for me are if I work with soil and clay, that's literally the land, the natural resource, the place where I live. It's I think the French call it the terroir, right? The essence of where I live. And because I'm a knitter, of course, I go directly to the fiber and the sheeps and the animals and the plants that we use to knit with. And I know that for me, where I live right now, there are many local producers of fiber. I live in a place that has a little taste of agriculture, so I do have access to locally sourced wool. I know of producers that grow cotton and make cotton yarns and cotton wool blends, and there's something about being able to meet the shepherd that has the animals and then being able to knit with those fibers. And even some local producers will go so far as to label your skein of yarn with the name of the animal that yarn was spun from. And if you want to talk about having a very intimate experience with an animal, I think knitting with the yarn of the named animal would fit that bill. And of course, we think about things like, you know, if you're purchasing locally or closer to home, then there's all that local economy, the small business, you get to know the producer, there's ethics involved, there's less gasoline to travel. Like, we're minimizing our impact on the environment when we do that. Another piece of the environment, of course, is the dyes. I have a apparel background, and the amount of synthetic dyes that go into creating the clothes that we wear and all of the supply chain pieces are global and interconnected. If we're working with a fiber producer and dyer that uses local yarns and then also uses natural dyes and components, then that's just minimizing. We're just getting one step closer to a natural experience versus a synthetic experience, which, you know, helps the environment. Let's look at what Ellie has to say next. She says the mindfulness of stuff. So she's talking about the angst of making more stuff in a world already overflowing with things. And then she also says that start by using materials chosen for their low environmental impact, things like natural fibers versus synthetic, or local natural dyes compared to chemical. So simple shifts in how we use what we have and use things in a different way. So some other things that come up for me, of course, are that when I knit with wool and plant animal fibers and plant fibers, those materials are by nature biodegradable. And so that's one piece of it, that I'm choosing a natural fiber, a natural material for the biodegradable piece. And then because it takes me so long to make things, if I knit a sweater, that's a very long time investment. I'm more likely to mend my sweater than to throw it away. And for me, what has evolved is the mending process becomes another level of expression and artistry. And in the way that no one would be able to mass produce the exact same sweater that I knit. If I mend a sweater because it has a hole, no one will be able to replicate that sweater the way that I mended it. And by mending it, I'm extending the life of that sweater. I think about Dolly Parton's song, because who doesn't love Dolly, but her coat of many colors that she talks about how her mother made a loving coat with scraps of fabric. So that's one way that we can reuse. I've noticed, especially in the pandemic, I've adapted the make it work mentality, where I might have in the past gone out and bought something new or bought a different, easier tool. Now I look at what I have and I try to make it work with the things that are readily accessible in my house, because I don't want to leave my house, or I want to minimize the amount of time that I spend outside of my quarantine or, socially distanced environment. So it's been an interesting observation to watch that evolve. I was working on a project a couple of days ago, and ideally I would have used one tool for the job, the right tool for the right job, but I didn't have that tool and I didn't want to go to the store. So I used a different tool. It took a little bit more time, but I have more time right now. And so the convenience of using what I have and being able to get the project done was what I chose over leaving the house to get the right tool. And in the end, it worked out. I got the result that I needed. The steps and the tasks got completed with the tools that I had on hand, and I didn't have to spend any more money. I already had what I needed. I just had to think a little bit more creatively and apply some problem-solving skills, but I figured it out. So that's a couple ways that I think about being environmentally conscious. And if you have things that you do with the environment in mind, drop your comment below. We'll talk next week.